This warning from the CEO of the nation's largest automaker, General Motors, about the impact of the tariffs on the car industry.
This morning, GM is putting a dollar figure on how much the president's tariffs will impact the company. The CEO says tariffs.
General Motors facility in Oshawa, Ontario, is the latest Canadian auto plant to feel the effect of U.S. tariffs.
General Motors has long stood as a pillar of the American automotive industry, a symbol of industrial might deeply embedded in the cultural and economic fabric of the United States. For decades, it has contributed to Detroit's identity as the Motor City, alongside Ford and Chrysler. But the recent announcement by GM to halt portions of its U.S. production sent shockwaves through both national and global markets. Top executives cited rising costs due to steel and aluminum tariffs, as well as intensifying global competition, as the primary factors behind this difficult decision. This move has not only rattled the U.S. economy, but also prompted widespread concern across the international automotive sector. Why has such a deeply rooted American company made such a drastic decision? Who will be affected? And how far will the consequences ripple? These questions demand a closer look at the broader context. From the impact of President Trump's trade policies to global production shifts and their implications for employment and economic stability. For more than a century, GM has been a cornerstone of the American dream, from producing war equipment to shaping generations through its iconic vehicle models. Its deep presence in U.S. towns and cities provided jobs to millions. However, President Trump's administration ushered in a protectionist trade era, adopting the America First stance. The imposition of heavy tariffs, ranging from 25% to 50%, on steel and aluminum imports was intended to support domestic metal industries. But in practice, these materials are essential to the automotive sector, which relies heavily on global supply chains. As a result, GM found itself paying tariffs twice, once for importing raw materials and again when exporting its finished products to retaliating markets such as China, the European Union, Mexico, and Canada. This created a compounding cost burden, commonly referred to as a double tax pie, which drained the company's profitability. It is estimated that GM incurred an additional $5 billion in costs, a figure that directly threatens its financial sustainability and undermines its capacity to invest in future-oriented ventures like electric vehicles and advanced research. The company's board concluded that these growing pressures left them with little choice but to reconfigure their operations on a global scale. Mary Barra, GM's chairwoman, publicly acknowledged that the worldwide economic climate had become too volatile to continue business as usual. Shipment of vehicles and parts was no longer feasible, and astronomical tariffs made U.S.-based manufacturing unviable. Other executives emphasized that the problem was not limited to tariffs alone. It included sudden regulatory changes, supply chain bottlenecks, and the urgent need to align with the fast-evolving electric vehicle market. The immediate fallout of GM's decision was felt in Canada, where the company announced it would suspend production of its Bright Drop electric delivery vans at the Ingersoll plant until at least October, resulting in a layoff of 500 out of 1,200 union workers. In the U.S., the impact is even more significant, particularly in towns that have long depended on GM's presence. These communities, once built around stable industrial work, are now facing uncertainty, with livelihoods on the line. The halt in electric pickup production, once hailed as GM's future flagship, is particularly troubling. These vehicles were expected to play a key role in modern logistics and have been seen by industry experts as game changers. Now, delays in this strategic line threaten GM's competitive edge. The consequences extend beyond GM's direct employees. A vast network of suppliers, transporters, manufacturers, and small businesses tied to the company will also feel the tremors. From machinists to part suppliers, from trucking companies to local toolmakers, the ripple effect is deep and wide. State governments are beginning to consider short-term relief for affected workers. However, there is growing skepticism about whether temporary measures can truly restore a production model that now seems fundamentally broken. GM is already investing in expanding facilities in regions such as Mexico, Latin America, Southeast Asia, and Eastern Europe. These locations offer relative political and economic stability, along with more favorable trade conditions. The company hopes to pivot toward a more adaptable, cost-efficient future by operating as a truly global manufacturer rather than an American-centric one. This shift, however, has sparked a fierce backlash from labor unions. Leaders feel betrayed, arguing that GM is abandoning skilled American workers to appease shareholders. Yet from GM's perspective, the future lies in rapid innovation and agility, especially in the race to lead electric vehicle production. They claim that remaining bound to the U.S. under such punitive tariff conditions would have meant financial suicide. The White House has not taken the matter lightly. President Trump accused GM of turning its back on his administration's efforts to support domestic industry. Some lawmakers are already contemplating legislation to prevent similar corporate departures. Critics argue that the tariff strategy intended to protect American industry has, paradoxically, driven one of its giants away. GM's exit, in their eyes, symbolizes the flaws of trade nationalism in a globalized world. Public sentiment also reflects deep disappointment. For many Americans, GM has never been just a company. It was a source of pride, a symbol of national ingenuity, and a link to a shared history. From World War II manufacturing to the cultural era of American muscle cars. To see it now distancing itself from its roots is, for some, an emotional loss as much as an economic one. Economists warn that GM's move may lead other companies to reconsider their presence in the U.S. If a titan like GM cannot make it work, what hope is there for others? A chain reaction could lead to the largest reshuffling of the U.S. automotive industry in modern history. Nonetheless, moving abroad brings its own risks. Each new country presents challenges: unfamiliar labor laws, regulatory complexity, cultural differences, and the daunting task of building a supply chain from scratch. Moreover, how will GM maintain coordination with its R&D teams and manage high-end processes, such as electric battery innovation? While GM intends to leverage the advanced ecosystems of Europe and Asia, it also enters highly competitive territories. Strategic alliances and local partnerships may become vital. And in today's unpredictable world, where global pandemics or sudden political shifts can paralyze industries, even this bold move is fraught with uncertainties. Ultimately, GM's decision marks one of the most profound shifts in the history of U.S. industrial production. The tariffs were meant to uplift domestic industry, yet they seem to have accelerated its fragmentation. In an era where global production and distribution are tightly intertwined, protectionism may do more harm than good. Although some argue this transformation was inevitable, that GM was simply adapting to a changing world. Others see it as a sad departure from a cherished legacy. The factories may continue to run elsewhere, but the spirit and identity that once defined Made in America will be harder to replace. So, what are your thoughts on this turning point in the automotive world?